Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discover Rising Tides, How the Outside Makes the Inside Better. My name is Jeanne Gallagher, and I am here with our longevity concierge, Denise Stigall, and our menopause mentor. Hey, Denise, how are you?
That's me. I'm good. I'm good. It's a
And
great
what are
day.
we what are we talking about today?
We're talking about how we can kind of just feel like we're out of the loop. Like our
Mm,
bodies just don't feel like they're firing in all cylinders. Like, your brain's not communicating with the rest of your body. Like you don't feel like you don't have the trust in your body anymore. Like you used to feel great all the time and you used to be able to sleep and now you can't rely on some of these things.
mhm.
And what these out of the loop things are, what these red flags are, and then a little bit about a strategy, how to get yourself back into the loop.
I love it. I love it because I think that we're probably out of the loop more than we realize that we are.
We'd say so. And in midlife, yes, it's definitely something that we feel on a more regular basis. Yes, we're probably out of the loop more than we're not. But when you look back in times when we were younger, there are also times hormonally that things were doing the same thing, right? When we were going through puberty, when we had kids, when people had kids, not we, because I didn't have kids. Right, your body does certain things, and a lot of the things your body does, it just does because that's what it's supposed to do. It doesn't, you don't have to think about it. But when you start to get out, feel like you're out of the loop, one, it's definitely chemical things, hormonal things, but it could also be your lifestyle. It could be lifestyle things.
Mhm.
So I know our guest later today talks about being out in nature and forest bathing and things like that. And that is such a great, almost new concept for us, right? But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, what do we feel like when we're out of the loop?
Mm.
We have some brain fog. We have a ton of fatigue. Even though we may be sleeping, or at least we're in bed 8 or 9 hours, right? We don't have control of our moods. We're all of a sudden experiencing anxiety.
Mm.
So all kind of red flags that our body's just out of the loop with itself, and our brain is not quite catching up to what's going on.
And I think that we also probably blame this on, oh, my work, or oh, my kids, or oh, this and oh, that. And so we're just chalking it up to this is the ticket that I punched. And
Mhm.
rather than taking a step back and saying, oh, these are some of the things I'm feeling. Could it be coming from dot, dot, dot?
One of the challenges, especially when we are in the workforce, no matter what we do for a job, for a living, right? Men and women are in business together. And as a woman, when you start to feel these things, we don't talk about it. We don't
Mhm.
want to look like we're vulnerable, like we're weak. We want to be equal to our counterparts, our male counterparts, right? Um,
Mhm.
and intellectually and strategically, we are. But we also have to remind ourselves that they're men, we're women, we're different, right? But in the workforce, we're thinking, "Ooh, I can't talk about this because, I could lose my job." There's stress. You mentioned about stress. We also kind of think, "Ooh, is this just aging? Is this how I'm supposed to feel? Like, am I going to feel like this the rest of my life?"
Mhm.
Um, as we age, yes, we are going to change. We go through phases. Menopause is kind of that phase that there's the perimenopause, the menopause, and then the life after menopause, right? But we're still changing. Our hormones are still declining. That's what it's supposed to do biologically. But that doesn't mean that we can't get back into the loop and feel better, think more clearly, and feel like we're in charge again, like we're in control.
Mhm. So we're This is a difficult one to I don't know, maybe it isn't a difficult one to identify, but I think sometimes it is because of all of these other factors that we've already talked about. And what are the next steps?
Mhm. I think always the first thing is to recognize some kind of pattern. You know your body better than anybody.
Mhm.
So if there's a new pattern, there's a new thing going on, and it's one thing to wake up one day and feel like you're just kind of eh. Um, but when you start to notice that it's every day, now it's been a couple of weeks, I've been feeling like this for a couple of months. That is a wake up call. You need to have the red flags. And then to step back and look to see what in our life is making this, causing this. It could be hormones. For women, that's always a question, right? But it could be that we are actually stressed out, and we're
Mhm.
not engaging, getting back outside and connecting to, I will say, Mother Earth. Just being out in nature, we talk about this all the time. Just being out in nature, lowers your blood pressure. It makes you smile. It is one of the best medication that's not medication. It's truly
Mhm.
one of the best things that we can do for ourselves, is to get out and just be.
I think one
That's
one
not.
one good thing to do is if you have I stink at this, but I'm going to suggest it to people, even though I'm not really good at it, is if you have a journaling practice, writing
Mhm.
down how you feel, but also if you can get yourself outside and just be with being outside, that means no headphones, no earbuds, no, put your phone in your pocket. Don't pay attention to it. Don't look at it and just listen to what's around you and notice what's around you or what's not around you. And then journal that too and see if there's a difference between your two stories that you've just written.
Absolutely. And the more we can do that and just be, that is such a
Hmm.
part of, um, getting back into the loop and getting back to feeling normal, getting
Hmm.
back to feeling ourselves. That's
Hmm.
really who we want to feel like. We want to feel like our old selves, right?
Hmm.
Our old selves in a new stage in life. And once you start to, get outside and be and journal and really start to feel like yourself again, all of a sudden you're going to notice, you're not reacting, you're responding to things,
Hmm.
right? You're thinking much more clearly. Anytime, I hear this from so many different people who have stressful jobs or in a stressful situation. I know, my husband does this every now and then when he's having a difficult surgery. He will walk out for a minute. Yes, they can do that. There's other people in the, operating room. He'll walk out and just, walk up and down the hallway for a minute and just clear his mind and get back to a task at hand.
Hmm.
We can do that for our own bodies
Hmm.
anytime, just to step away from whatever we're doing and regroup, right? Recalibrate. Um, and once we notice that we can do this more, like we're allowed to do this, right? Once we give ourselves permission, I think we'll notice, we do it more and more often. And the
Hmm.
more often we do it, it becomes a habit. And of course, once we have a habit of going outside, being in nature, reconnecting to ourselves, to our soul, to nature, uh, we feel better, we think more clearly, and we can really create a better strategy, to manage these times when we do feel like we're kind of out of the loop, so to speak.
I like it. And we were just talking before we started, and just as a little interlude of what could happen here is we were talking before we started, and this is an introduction to a topic that we want to go more in depth. And I think that there's going to be an in-depth with Denise and Jean talking about, and I like the way you talked about it, is your body as a business partner and being in touch with whether you are out of the loop within yourself is an important piece of that. But I think we're going to break it down a little bit further because there's a lot to unpack here. So stay
There
tuned.
is, there is. Stay tuned, everyone. Thanks, Jean.
In depth with Denise and Jean is coming up.
Woohoo!
Thank you, Denise. Hello, everyone. This is Jeanne Gallagher, Discover Rising Tides, and I want to just take a moment to talk about my friend, Denise Stegall. I am honored to call her as a friend, and I'm so grateful that she gives us her insight during our shows each show and talks about healthy living, eating real food. You hear Denise say, eat real food a lot. Well, she means it, and she knows what she's talking about. She is an amazing healthy living coach, curator at Living Healthy List. And if you ever have any questions about what is real food, why does it matter, how does that apply to me, how do I change, what do I need to do, how do I even create a healthy living shopping list, make sure that you call her. She is your healthy living coach, and you can find her at healthylivinglist.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jeanne Gallagher, and welcome to Discover Rising Tides, How the Outside Makes the Inside Better. And I am excited to introduce our guest today, Carla Wainwright. Hi, Carla. How are you?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Jean.
Oh, thank you so much for being here as well. And if you're listening to us on any of the podcast platforms and you want to see our shiny faces, please jump over to YouTube and we'll be here waiting for you to show up and watch. So, Carla, thank you again for being here. And I want to talk to you about your business and what you're doing, but give us a little bit about your background, and we're going to start there and then dive in.
Great. So, like many people, I have a kind of a varied background.
Mhm.
As a child, I was very connected to nature. I spent a ton of time in nature, and just had this passion for the environment and animals. And so I decided as a young person to pursue a career as a wildlife biologist, and I did that for many years. And there were parts about that profession that were great, but there were lots of parts that weren't as good. And what I really began to discover in that career is that I wasn't able to actually transform my passion for the environment and wildlife to what felt like to me like meaningful action. Like I wasn't
Mm,
really making a difference. And so, kind of concurrently to that, I was, as an adult, I was beginning to just really explore some of the Eastern practices like yoga and Tantra and Qigong, and just really started to get excited by that work and, or that exploration rather. I actually opened a yoga studio while I was a wildlife biologist, and I kind of hit this point where I needed to make a decision, like what path was I going to take?
mm,
And it just really became clear to me that the work that I was doing with students around really connecting with the wisdom of the body and healing just really felt like that was much more my dharma, like my life's purpose.
mm,
And I actually felt that if I did that, I was able to just be connected to the environment and nature in ways that just felt much more powerful than it did in my professional career. So I made that switch in my mid 30s and really haven't looked back since then. And so that kind of transformed its way into really working with women around using sexual energy that we can learn to use from all of these wisdom traditions and really channel that as a force of incredible creative power. And so I've done that work for many years. And in my own transition through perimenopause and menopause, I started to weave back in some of my scientific learnings, as a trained scientist, to really recognize like some of the metabolic pieces that would also really help a woman thrive at that point in her life. So it's a really short timeline of what I've done, but I really feel like at this point in my life and for the past 10 years or so, I've returned back to my my scientific roots, but I'm also very much connected to my energetic and the really the deep wisdom of the energy and the wisdom of the body.
mm. You have the perspective of both worlds. You can take your biology or your science background, and you're fortunate enough to be able to hold on to that while you are exploring the more woo side of things, and integrate both pieces to really create a more uh, confident or more information based picture for people to better understand cause and effect.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
Mhm,
I do feel like I straddle both worlds. And,
mhm,
of course, what we continue to learn as science kind of catches up with some of the more esoteric is that, often people need to have science prove things that it's actually
mhm,
correct, even though,
mhm.
wisdom traditions over the world have known this for centuries and centuries. And I love how that bridges. But yes, I do definitely find that my scientific background helps ground things for people in ways that they
Mhm.
feel often more available and open to exploring.
Mhm. And tell us a little bit about, let's break down wisdom traditions for just a second so that people we're all on the same page. And what does
Mhm.
that really mean?
Yeah, so I guess I would term wisdom traditions to be some of these very old systems like yoga, which is not just, of course, unrolling a mat and doing a few postures. It's actually a whole entire scientific
Mhm,
system that's very complex and very robust. The Qigong system that comes from traditional Chinese medicine, Tantra, which is fusion in not necessarily fusion, but it also comes from India. These very deep traditions where the observation piece was so important. So, unlike in modern times where we do something and we replicate it a few times and then we sort of determine that as, this is a fact, in these wisdom traditions, people would practice these things over and over and over again for decades, centuries, and use their powers, their heightened powers of observation to actually make, determinations or ways that they thought that the world worked, which were provable
mhm.
over and over and over
Conclusions.
again. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm,
So I really think the wisdom traditions that it's coming from a place of deep embodied wisdom.
mhm,
Embodiment for me is just it's almost a lost art that so many of us have forgotten how to connect into, but these wisdom traditions really rely on the felt experience within the body and using the wisdom of the body to verify that. So that's I guess what I would call as wisdom traditions, and I think that the essence of that is actually within each and every one of us.
mhm.
So, this capacity to actually feel into our bodies and know what is true, to know what is right for ourselves, all of those things. But it does absolutely take a lot of practice.
This is really important work, I think, because you used a word that's been coming up in a lot of conversations that I've noticed on with me or with that I've been hearing is the word connect. And I don't think we as a society are connecting in the correct ways, or we're connecting on this very high level that's um, almost very superficial versus you're talking about connection, but also felt experiences. So there's this internal deepness that needs to happen. And in our societies today, we are in such a immediate gratification place and with our phones and our electronics, and we're not connecting and we're not having conversations with others, but we're probably not even having conversations with ourselves that are deep enough to discover what's going on.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, and I guess in some ways it would seem that we're the most connected we've ever been in terms of being able, like here we are on
And
Zoom,
so unconnected at the
totally,
same
yeah, and
time.
so completely unconnected. And I
Yeah.
think that that's really reflected in how lost and separated people feel. My sense is that the level of separation from, yes, ourselves and others is really probably unparalleled in any time
Mhm.
in history. So you're absolutely right. And that's reinforced, unfortunately, by our modern living. There's a
Mhm.
real evolutionary mismatch between our modern lifestyle and this physical body that we have that's, of course, evolved over tens and tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years. And so the modern, the challenge of modern living is like, how do we make our way back to connection when there's so many things competing for our attention? Right?
Mm.
So attention and connection, of course, not being the same thing. And some of the ways that we do that are so profoundly simple, but so, so difficult. So one of them, of course, is just slowing down,
Mhm.
really hard, really, really difficult for a lot of people to do.
And being quiet.
And being quiet and not
Mhm.
reaching for that, as you said, like the instant gratification,
Oh,
that dopamine
it's
hit
so
that you're
hard.
getting. Yeah, exactly.
It's
Can
so
I just like,
ridiculously hard.
yeah, can I just sit here and actually just look out the window, you know,
Yeah.
or
So this is just a side story because it came into a conversation yesterday. I was talking with my son yesterday, and he's an elevator mechanic, and he was working at this high school, and he's so fed up. But because these kids are so unconnected with each other and with their environment around them, they don't realize what's around them, they don't have any manners, they don't have any, they're not communicating, and they're all walking with their face in their phones, and they're not doing anything. And he's been working at this high school for a couple of weeks, and so he's gotten to know some of the teachers, and he sees how these high school students are interacting with their coaches and their teachers. And he was so frustrated, he took all his social media off his phone. He says, I cannot be a part of this. I was so
mm,
proud of him. But
yeah.
he could not stand what was he was watching and feeling because of this unconnected, just disassociated
Hmm.
lack of communication thing that was going on. And that's, that's concerning because of every, as these generations are coming up, there's, it's going to continue. So like this has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with what you're doing, but it has everything to do with what you're doing at the same time. Because I think that's what's so important about your work, is that we need to be better stewards of ourselves and our mind, and then also share that with others, and making sure that we're helping people learn better habits.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, it does have everything to do with the type of work that I do. And you know, as I mean, first of all, what your son did is amazing. And
I'm so proud of him.
yes, and you know, I
I wish
think
I was as tough as him. I'm like, oh my God. And then I keep coming up in my head, well, I can't do that because I've got these business things, and I've got these things that I need to do and I'm like, it's all excuses.
yeah, we're good at justifying. The mind is
Oh
very,
my word.
very good at that. But I mean, just imagine like what a great model he's going to be.
Mhm.
That's what you know, without going too far down that path, but that's what younger people need to see. They need to see
Yeah.
people who are older who are actually modeling the behavior and the connection that we know
Mm.
is so important and valuable.
Mm. So as you're integrating these thoughts and processes, and how does that change, or what does that do for ourselves and our body? I know that we were talking about metabolism and physical body and energetic body, and how does all of this integrate, or what does that really even mean?
Hmm. So I use this term called sacred metabolism, and that is really the North Star of the work that I do. And this is really bringing the science and the sacred together. So, you know, on the one hand, of course, we need to take care of this physical vessel
Hmm.
that, you know, so many of us want to live and be vital well into, you know, old age. And we want to feel good in our bodies because actually most people don't feel particularly good in
Hmm.
their bodies. And particularly as women make that transition, you know, usually starting around their early 40s into perimenopause and then menopause, you know, there's so many challenges that come with a shift in, you know, a shift in hormones. All kinds of things are happening for her where her body really needs to be taken care of in a new and profound way. And so putting that wellness and supporting, you know, optimal metabolic function in the body, which includes being insulin sensitive, meaning that you don't have the highs and lows of your blood sugar, meaning that you're able to sleep, you know, relatively decently as much as you're able to, meaning that you are regulated in your nervous system, all of these various things, that your cortisol levels are, you know, not all over the map and burning you out. So from the sacred metabolism piece, we really need to take care of this vessel. And I use the framework of metabolic health to do that. And then on the other side, there's the sacred piece, which is really connecting to our energy, our life force energy. So we have within us this incredibly powerful energy, which is often referred to as sexual life force energy. And of course, that could be used to create a new life, but it doesn't have to be. It's actually the energy that it's generative. It creates things. So it is very, very powerful, but it's often very suppressed or subdued for a lot of women. And so how do we awaken that? Well, we awaken that through, they can be mindfulness practices, nature-based practices, breath work. There are many different energy practices, particularly from the Qigong and Tantra tradition, that begins to awaken that energy and body. And of course, our metabolism is about how our bodies create and use energy. So of course, it makes sense that not only is it the physical, but it's also the energetic. And we need to address both of those things together. So in my work, I really support women to do that. And just to thread it back to this whole connection piece, the connection piece of being connected to your body and feeling your body, and not just being like a walking, talking head on a disembodied, rest of you. This is so central to this, because in order for a woman to feel vibrant and thrive, she has to feel connection within herself and to herself.
Hmm. Within and to.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out which question I want to ask you is, well, how does that happen? But also but first, how do you recognize whether you are or not?
Whether you are connected?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Well, I would say that often there's an intuitive sense that you're
Mhm.
connected or not. And I would say that the vast majority of women I talk to feel actually really disconnected from themselves and
Mhm.
disconnected from their bodies. So I think that there's an intuitive knowing. And I would also say that, if you're living in a state of high stress, if you're constantly in fight or flight or freeze, then good chances you're not particularly connected to your body, because there's all of this other stuff in the way of that deep, true connection that's in alignment with, the inner landscape of who you are. I think a woman who feels connected to herself just knows
Mhm.
that and is
Mhm.
really grounded in that inner knowing.
So really that intuitive piece, or
Mhm.
in taking the time to uh inter inwardly focus on what you might feel.
Yes, absolutely. And listening. So I think a lost capacity that many women, that of course we can come back to, but need to be taught how to do, is to actually listen to the body and the wisdom of the body. So the body is constantly giving us messaging. It's constantly actually sharing what is happening, not
Mhm.
necessarily at a biochemical level, but more in terms of, are there parts that don't feel safe? Are there parts that need more attention or need something in particular? And we can absolutely tap into that wisdom, but we have to cultivate the capacity to listen and the confidence to understand or discern between, this is like my fight or flight response happening, and this
Mm.
is actually deep embodied wisdom. And so that is one of the things that I help women do, is begin to take that, take those experiences and actually come into real embodiment, so that she can trust herself more and more and more as
Mhm.
she moves through her life, through all the various aspects of her life, so she can tap into that deep intuitive knowing.
And those are really important tools to learn. And there is a learning process that needs to happen in order to be able to come to the point where you are interpreting the messages correctly,
Yes, absolutely.
or even
Absolutely. It
hearing
takes
them.
practice. Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. But it's, I just want everyone to feel like, if they're listening to this and they're like, I have no idea how to do that. Well, actually, there is a remembrance inside you that does know how to do it. And so, you can learn how to do this. Everybody can learn how to do this.
And then with your skills, they're able to tap in, interpret, and then understand and take action.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so incredibly empowering when you feel like you have that deep connection to your body and the wisdom that's within there.
Hmm. And so some of the tools that you had mentioned, um, whether it's nature bathing or some of the other tools, can you list those out for us?
Absolutely. So, I mean, certainly nature is my go-to always.
We're going to break that one down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So nature's my go-to always, just because it's interesting. Like when we go into nature, it feels like for many people, it's the one time it's like, yes, I can put away my phone. Yes, I can actually just be present with my senses and notice what's around me. So that in
Mhm.
itself is super, super powerful. In terms of other kinds of practices, so definitely some movement practices. I'm a really big fan of a shaking practice.
Mhm.
Shaking is a very powerful way to release tension in the body and also release what is known as armoring, right? All of these protective postures that we put on our body. And when we begin to let that go, we start to feel more energy. We start to feel more aliveness. And that can often be this kind of like percolation of like, oh, there's some sensations here that I've never experienced before or that I'm really curious about. So that can wake things up. Um, Other practices, like I'm very big into the senses. So the senses really help regulate the nervous system. So it's like, how can you be fully connected to an experience? Like, what is it that I see? What is it that I hear, taste, smell, feel, all of these things? And that is also how we begin to drop into a deeper sense of embodiment. And
Mhm.
then I would say overarching all of that is pleasure. And so pleasure, I think, is like the secret ingredient. We have a huge pleasure deficit in our lives. So yes, we gonna get what we think is pleasure, but I'm talking about deep embodiment, using pleasure as the way to get there. And I know that we often associate pleasure with sex, and of course, that can be the case, but pleasure is so much bigger than that, right? So, using pleasure as one of the ways that you really move through your day. So it's like, can I
Mhm.
have a minimum of 5 pleasurable experiences today and slow down within those experiences? And when you do that, again, it's like this the relaxation and the receptivity that happens as a result of that is extremely powerful. And this brings us back into our bodies.
Mm. Isn't that interesting that there has to be an intention or an intentional moment to realize whether there is pleasure in your day?
Yes. I mean, it
It,
goes
I want to
both
use the word
ways.
ridiculous, but I totally I totally understand why we need to do that. But it's ridiculous that we have to say that.
Yes, I think we because unfortunately our minds are distracted and we
Mm.
aren't present, we do have to actually be intentional about it. Although I know we all have experiences where it catches us off guard and we're
Hmm.
just in it too, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. And as we, as whether in your professional career or whether you have children at home or whatever stage in life you're at, the ability to multitask has I've always thought that is a badge of honor. I can do 2 or 3 or 15 things at once. Every once in a while something falls through the cracks. But the terrible part about being well skilled in this function is that you are not totally present in any of those things that you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And
I also
and
pride myself as a multitasker, and I also have to recognize when it's time to put that hat down.
it's really hard to
It
put it
is.
away. It's
It
really hard
is.
to put it away. I find for me, one of the, well, not one, probably the only place that it goes away naturally is when I'm outside.
Mhm.
And then I realize that I also feel other things bubbling up. And or you taking a hike and you're thinking, oh, these are these things, because your mind is starting to clear and you're taking all these things start to come up of, oh, you should be doing, or you could be what later, or you could have, or you forgot to, all of these thoughts that either you have to capture them so they're because some of them are actually incredibly valid because your mind is just settling and allowing for space. So either, a voice memo to write them down or just saying go away and come back when
Yeah.
it's appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, one thing I would love to recommend is, I'm guessing you when you're out in nature, you're just fully, it sounds like you're fully present in it. I see a lot of people
Sometimes
out in
I don't
nature.
don't don't think too much of me here.
Okay, sometimes you are.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
Sometimes you are. And
Yeah, I try really hard to
sometimes I
be,
do
but
this too, but I really recommend like leave the headphones at home
oh,
and
definitely.
just be in the environment and pay attention. So where I live, there are bears and moose and all of those sorts of things. So it's like a safety thing too, right?
Sure.
You need to be aware of your surroundings. But the most amazing things happen. The other day, I was on a walk in the forest barefoot because that's my jam, and I
Mm,
heard an owl.
we need to be friends.
Yeah, and if I had been listening to something, I would have missed the owl. It was so, and I
Exactly.
called back and forth to this owl for a couple of minutes. It was so incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny when I'm out there and I don't hike with headphones for all of those reasons. And I see people with radios and hiking in headphones and I'm thinking and I come this close to saying, "Dude, you're missing the birdies. How can you not hear
Yeah.
the birds
I
and
know.
the rustle of the squirrels and
Yeah.
yeah, and the bear. That is also very important
Yes.
too." Um, so let's talk about nature bathing for a second and let's break this down because it's funny that this is a thing. 20 years ago, it probably wasn't a thing because we were outside more. Maybe it was closer to 30. But for me, I'm most happy when I am barefoot. And shoes are, if I was born with them on my feet, then I should have been wearing them, but I wasn't. So that's my that's my mantra. But let's talk about nature bathing and really what is it? Why is it a term and why does it how does it impenetrate us?
Well, I think forest bathing, I think, isn't that a Japanese term? So there is a practice,
Hmm.
a spiritual practice around that. Um, so why is it important? Well, so again, sometimes like people need to have they need like a practice with a name and a set of instructions to anchor to. And that's
Mm,
absolutely I think that's great if that's
great
if
point.
that's going to help,
Hmm.
you take that next step. But really, as you were saying, it's like before all of this, we were outside all the time.
Hmm.
We weren't nature bathing, we were living,
Hmm.
right? But it seems like in our modern time, we actually have to make space for that. And it is so powerful because, of course, um, and doing this without your shoes is what makes it powerful, is the grounding aspect, right? So, of
Hmm.
course, modern science has caught up with that in terms of the effect it has on reducing inflammation and helping with sleep and all of these sorts of things. So, it really I can't speak in like I'm not 100% sure, but in terms of like the positive and negative ions and all of that sort of thing, but there's something that really powerful that happens as a reset when we stand on the earth in our bare feet. I think that it begins to awaken, as I was saying earlier, like this deep remembrance
Hmm.
of us as beings and part of an ecosystem of where we're
Hmm.
all connected. So when we're in our houses with the triple pane windows and the shoes and all of the things, we don't feel very connected to something that is bigger than ourselves, right? But when we are in nature, suddenly I think it taps into our biology and this deep remembering of our true nature and how powerful that is. And I just I can't speak to it enough that spending time in nature is really the antidote to modern living and all of the challenges that we have. So we can, of course, experience pleasure. We begin to rewire our nervous system, where our breath relaxes, our cortisol goes down, we become more insulin sensitive. Like all of
Hmm.
these really positive things happen as a result of spending that time. And, whether we want to call it nature bathing or, just being present in nature fully, any of those things, so important.
we've been talking about forest, and you're in British Columbia, correct?
Yes.
I'm in California right now, but my heart is, and I'm being Maine in a couple of weeks, or actually in a week. So that's where my heart is, because it is, we live in the woods there, and I can walk out back into the woods and just be there, or just sitting in the yard. I'm in the woods. I can't see a house. And we spend most of our time outside just living and eating, and not everybody is that fortunate to have all of that so readily available. And it's important for people to understand that, if you're living in a city, there is still outdoors. And being able to modify your, either you modify your expectations, or realize what you have available to you, whether it is a park or taking a walk downtown. You're still outdoors, you're still there with, if is with nature's environments. There's still birds.
Yes.
You can still be connected if you are not in an area that, you can't step out and step into the woods.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't want anyone to think that if they don't live, right beside wilderness, that they can't take advantage of nature.
Mm.
The encouragement is to just wherever you are, where you notice trees, birds, grass, plants, anything, is to just pay attention and
Mm-hmm.
just slow down, take some deep breaths and notice what happens. Like, what do you feel inside you in this like incredible body when you
Mm-hmm.
actually are intentional about connecting with the environment around you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really important. And I noticed that when if I haven't been out and I've been inside for longer than normal and I haven't been out, or I notice it mostly when I go home and I put myself in the ocean, it takes my breath away. Not the water is cold, so it's not the cold water that does
Yeah.
that, but it is that is there like this reset that happens.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm,
Yesterday, I went for a walk by the river and I just kind of went into the forest. It was a clear cut. We just got brush and I just lay down and I just closed my eyes and smelled, all the
mm,
richness of the fall, the foliage and everything around. And it was like, it's the same sort of experience. It's like takes your breath away. It's just so powerful.
mhm. Yeah, it is. When you're working with people, what do you notice as they're going through this process, kind of like a before and after, the changes that happen within them? Can you give us a couple of examples of how you might see people evolve and change as their practice changes?
So are you talking specifically around the nature-based practices or in
Not
terms of,
necessarily, just in general, just in general,
yeah.
as you are working with clients and you're helping them figure out, helping them become more in tune with themselves
Mhm.
and becoming more centered, and what that evolution for them is.
Sure, absolutely. So for many women, starting with the physical metabolic piece often feels like the safer place to start because it
Mhm.
is, kind of more in terms of something that they might be able to relate to. It's a scientific conversation. And as women begin to make changes in their life where they start to sleep better, where perhaps their blood sugar isn't all over the map, that they're eating better, their microbiome is, flourishing more, all of these various pieces. Suddenly, the nervous system feels more receptive to then move into the deeper parts around really connecting with that, you know, the energetic metabolism piece. And so what I find is it's not that I wait to do that, but I'm always titrating it in, right? So small bits. You, of course, like anyone who works with anybody, even in your profession, you meet people where they're at.
Mhm.
But that typically making all of those lifestyle changes or and working on that creates a softness and an opening in the body that allows women to then dive into her feminine energy, her sexual energy. What is in there? How does it feel? How could this impact my life and my choices? And so it's almost like a blossoming open, right? So if we imagine, a bud of a flower that's all tight and it's holding itself, and as there is this like opening and relaxation into feeling really great inside and out, then that receptivity opens and that blossoming really happens. And I see that over and over again. We're holding on to so much, and we just aren't really often sure where to start because we've just been doing the same things over and over, but we don't actually really know, we might sprinkle things in here or there, but it's like when we address the whole person, when we address all of these pieces together, there is really that incredible vibrancy that begins to really awaken within someone.
That's a beautiful analogy. That's a really great way to express that. And what would be some triggers or messages or thoughts that somebody might have that would really point them to say, you know what, I think I need to go talk with Carla?
Well, I would say, if you're feeling like you're disconnected from your body, you're just having a really difficult time, like feeling what's happening within you. Perhaps you're just feeling sluggish. Your energy is really, really low. You're not sleeping. You just don't feel like yourself. And this is often what happens as women kind of move into their 40s and beyond. They were feeling really good, and now they just don't feel like themselves. And they know they just don't want this to be the story for the rest of their lives. And I can guarantee you it doesn't need to be. Because, I really want women to feel connected to herself and vibrant again, and being able to honor the physical and energetic sides of who she is.
And when people are working with you, what does that look like?
So, well, we work together typically online, and we go through a fair amount of you really checking in terms of the symptom picture. I work with something called a multi-therapeutic approach. So I'm looking at a variety of different aspects related to somebody's body. So what we eat, when we eat, circadian rhythms, what are the things you're doing to support your mental health? How are we detoxing? We didn't talk about that today, but that's a big part of what I do, is really addressing the toxic overload or toxin overload that, pretty much all of us have in our bodies, because just face it, we live in the most toxic time in history. And so we address all of those pieces, and then I intersperse that. So one session will focus more on the physical metabolic piece and all of those things I just mentioned. And then another session will be really around somatic support. So what's happening within the body. Maybe we use breath. Maybe we use a practice called somatic experiencing to really uncover what's happening and the wisdom of the body, teaching that. There are a lot of different practices that come from the Qigong tradition, as well as what are known as earth priestess practices that I teach women. And so we move back and forth in this container, really exploring these two aspects of sacred metabolism. So the physical as well as the energetic.
That's beautiful. And how do people get in touch with you, Carla?
So the best way for women to get in touch with me is to go to vibrancyreset.com. And so I made this vibrancy guide to help women get started on all the things we were just been talking about in this great conversation. And it gives 5 doable steps that you can take right away. So you just go to vibrancyreset.com and you start rebuilding your rhythm, your radiance, your resilience there.
Amazing. Carla, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, but mostly thank you so much for the work that you do and connecting with people and helping them connect with themselves.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening today. Today's show is sponsored by Seaside Solutions, my financial services company. As a business owner, it's easy to be pulled in many different directions, and often taking care of yourself plummets to the bottom of the list. For me, I find myself outside to reground. My time outdoors helps me manage my day more effectively and be more present for my clients. Through this, Discover Rising Tides was born. At Seaside Solutions, we truly believe that education is the foundation of financial wellness. Our primary focus is to provide guidance that is designed to help you achieve your long-term financial goals and visions. Working with a plan allows space for doing more things that you love, like being outside to make the inside better. If I can help you create or realign your plan, or if you would like to be added to my weekly newsletter, please let me know. This week's topic was 5 ways to set more achievable goals. Your referral means the big, beautiful world to me, and if I can help, please let me know. And thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.